My name's Kesteven. I've been a pro mountain bike tester for over 23 years now. And today I've been up at Ardmore's Enduro in Yorkshire, live ride reviewing the Marin Attack Trail 8. So, this is the tech talk round that goes with the bike. So just go into a bit more detail on the specifics of geometry, technology and stuff that make the bike ride how it does. So starting off, it's an affordable bike, it's over £3,000 in the UK, full alloy frame, alloy back end obviously, alloy single piece forged linkage up here, with what Marin called a multi-track suspension, which is essentially a single pivot. As you can see, the pivot on the rear is on the seat stay rather than the chain stay, but all the way through you can see nice chunky detailing, you know, big double-sided pivots there, large diameter bearings, relatively narrow across the main pivot there, but you know, good sturdy chainstay sections there. Just keeps the internal cable routing plugged in, keeps it out of the way of the chain there. Got, you know, you might need a slightly bigger chainstay protector on that might rattle around a bit, but you know, it wasn't obvious when I was riding it. And actually, to be fair, overall it's a really quiet bike. You've got relatively low standover and relatively short seat tubes, so even this is an XL. I've got the dropper slam to the knuckle on it to fit me on it, but normally I'd ride a large. So this XL, in terms of numbers, 65-degree head angle. It's not super radical, but then it's plenty relaxed enough, confident enough to really put the front wheel out far enough. It's a 1230 wheelbase. It's a short offset 36 fork on the front with 160mm of travel. It's the performance grade one, so you've got a grip 2 damper in there, not a fit damper, and you know, fairly simple internals, but to be honest, it works really well. You know, it hasn't got factory coating on it, but still plenty slick, and it's just a really good set and forget fork. Something to note, I would go slightly lower than the quoted figures on the back of the leg. Fox put in there as a guidance. Moving back, as I say, you got internal cable routing there. Reach on this extra large is 490mm. It's 465 on a large, which is the size I probably normally go for. But you know, it's good to have that. You know, on the fast sort of open sections of this Ardmore's course, it's been really good to have that extra length. In terms of practicality, you've got ISCG bash guard mounts there. You've got screw-in bottom bracket. You've got a bottle cage boss on the top of the down tube, so you're not getting any spray on it. Plenty of room for your essential enduro strap-ons. Obviously, boost rear axle, and talking a bit more about the geometry, relatively steep seat angle. Really short for a 29er, really short back end. 430mm chainstays on this, despite the fact it's 2.6 inch tyre, 29 by 2.6 inch tyre this bike's running, and there's still plenty of room in here. And a lot of that's because not only have we got this big kink in the seat tube, you've also got no stay on the top here, which is why you've got those big chunky double-sided pivots there, just to keep the stiffness in there. And I wouldn't say it's outstandingly stiff, but I certainly wouldn't say it's flexible either. You know, right bang in there in terms of, you know, middle of the pack, perfectly predictable, obedient tracking, even on this long bike. I mean, where Marin really scores in terms of the sort of kit they've fitted to this bike for the money, in terms of numbers, it's certainly really well sorted. You've got really short 35mm stem, so you're looking over the front and you're seeing, you know, plenty of fork crown, you're almost seeing the head tube. So really reactive, light steering feel to it, although you've got plenty of leverage in these long deity bars. You've got decent Marin grips. You've got KS dropper post of a decent stroke there, 150mm stroke standard. It's a Truvative descendant crank, so good sturdy crank on a dub bottom bracket. NX rear end, so you've got the NX rear end, but what's interesting is that's actually a GX cassette, so you've got the lighter weight cassette and it's on an XD driver, so that's a significant weight saving at the end of these short chainstays, and that actually keeps the back end feeling more responsive than it would do if they put an NX cassette on there. So props to Marin for doing that. A lot of bike companies would have done it the other way. They'd have put like a highlight rear mech on there, but a heavier cassette, and that would have been, you know, definitely the wrong decision in terms of handling. 32 tooth chainring there, so it can be it's a bit of a firm pedal if you're going up really steep stuff with these big volume tyres on 29er wheels. It gives you plenty of gears to play with that 1050 spread on the back. And again, because they've gone for the GX cassette, that gives you a full 1050 500% gear range, whereas of course an NX cassette is 1150, so slightly smaller gear range. So plenty of top end there. Like I say, Fox 36 performance fork on the front, giving 160mm of travel, and on the back you've got this Fox DPX2 Evol shock on the rear. Relatively limited in terms of adjustment. You do need the mid-firm position if you're going to do a lot of climbing out the saddle. It's pretty bouncy in open, but sat down, really smooth, loads of traction, loads of kind of grip and just enough feedback, and then settles into a really nice, firm, supportive mid-stroke. This bike properly rails. That's one thing that's clear all the way through the video in terms of there's a lot of bucket turns here at the Ardmores, and it just keeps whoomph, cutting in, just nice, really good in terms of how the bike sits and how it controls its ride height. It's definitely tuned as more of a downhill bike, although it pedals perfectly acceptably. And also 15 kilos, inevitably that's going to be more of a downhill bike as well. It's a trunnion shock, so you got plenty of sensitivity in the top bearings there, and again just keeps the back end really active and mobile over that sort of small traction patter bumps. Really keeps it glued down, which is a good job, because the one big drawback with this bike I would say are the flow snap tyres. They're meant to be tacky compound. Doesn't really feel it on the bike. They're very wooden carcass. I mean, they're tough as hell. I've reviewed them before and they're very tough and they don't puncture easily. But in terms of actual ride feel and sort of that warm feedback and connectivity you want from a tyre, not really there on these flows. It just feels like a really wooden carcass. So that's definitely something I've upgraded as soon as possible. And it's the same tyre on the back. But, you know, on the plus side, they're relatively hard compounds, so they give good rolling speed. Other things, talk about TRP, Slate T4 brakes. I don't know if you can see. These have actually got upgraded pads in them. Definitely gives these brakes more bite. Without the upgraded pads in, they're pretty lame when it comes to bite. You can see what they've gone from. They're a good, affordable 4-put setup, and they're pretty reliable. But feel is definitely improved by those different pads on the front. And they've also been sensible enough to fit 200mm rotor on the front and a 180 on the back here, so at least there's plenty of at least these brakes are operated with plenty of leverage. And just moving up along the backside here again, you can see a bit more clearly you've got that threaded dub bottom bracket in there, so nice and easy to service, solid frame, really sorted geometry, decent width rims, these Marin rims, and they're tubeless ready. Only thing I would say, pickup on the hub is pretty slow. Which combines with rapid rebound in the upper part of the shock stroke, that can make it quite clunky when you're trying to drive it, particularly uphill. It can be quite clunk, 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 because the shock's bouncing back quickly, and then there's a big gap between the free hub actually picks up power, so it can get a bit clunky on climbs. But otherwise, as a general rule, free hubs which which only have a few clicks generally tend to last longer because the pockets the poles are sitting in are larger. Apart from that, you can see detail in here. You've got pockets in the back of the stays, these forged ends here where to save a bit of weight where possible. And to be honest, pretty much every bike in this category weighs, certainly at this price point, is going to weigh around 15 kilos, sort of 32, 33 pounds. So I'm not surprised that that's what this comes in at. And so overall, in summary, I mean, I'd say it's a really simple bike to set up. Did basically pretty bare minimum setup on it. Set the sag on the rear, got the fork ballpark, and then, like I say, I just did that on the trail, just dropped a bit of pressure out of it to introduce a bit more sensitivity, just to match the rear shock as much as anything else, because it's got such a nice supple start. After the first track, I just felt my hands were being beaten up a little bit, so just let a bit of pressure out the fork, and that balanced it up nicely. Drivetrain, I like the detailing in that in terms of that GX cassette. Front end's super solid, and the bike just sits you in its shape really well. It's really easy to control. And considering I'm definitely not a fan of these tyres, it actually, it's performed and been really predictable all day up here in mixed kind of loamy, dusty, rocky trail situations. So yeah, overall, really impressive package for the money. All I'd say is change out the tyres when you get the opportunity, especially if you're riding in damper, slipperier conditions. That's where you're really going to find out that, they kind of lack that feedback that you need. But for the money, really well sorted, really easy to ride. In terms of geometry, in terms of suspension setup, I've had a right blast on this. So yeah, thoroughly recommended for the money. Okay, so thanks for watching. Make sure you watch the live ride review on this bike, where obviously, there's a bit more feedback on how it actually rides. And you can see some of the Ardmores Enduro course. But please don't ride these tracks when the Ardmores isn't on, because it's all on private land and you'll just jeopardise the future of the event. Apart from that, thanks to Marin for supporting this video. Thanks to Can't Quit, Camelback, 7 Mesh, Go, Giro, and 100% for the kit. Oh, and Red Bull for the fancy shades, even though the sun's gone in now. But thanks for your time. Thanks for subscribing, and if you want to see more backroom stuff, more exclusive edits, then consider subscribing to my Patreon site. So, I've been Guy Kesteven, that's been the Marin Alpine Trail 8, and this has been Ardmore's Enduro 2019. Thanks very much.